Hey, Eric.
Hey John, how's it going?
It's going well. It's going well. How are you tonight?
It's good. Anything exciting happened this week?
Let's see. This is concert week for me, I guess. I went to,
Oh, that's right.
yeah, we went to a James Taylor concert last night, which was cool. I, uh, I kind of rushed home after work and we had a quick pizza and then the boys are old enough that we were just like, there's leftover cake in the fridge. Have as much as you want. Go to bed, brush your teeth, and lights out by 9 o'clock, and mom and I will be home by midnight, which we basically were. But so that was great. That was really cool to see him in concert, and he's 70 years old and he is rocking it. Anyway, that was fantastic. And then this Friday night out at Edgefield, I get to go see BNL. So, um,
Nice. That one I'm jealous of.
oh, you're not jealous of the James Taylor, huh? Well, in
Sorry.
reality, that James Taylor,
I'm
James
sure it
Taylor,
was
James
great.
Taylor was for Shirley mostly. Although I enjoy him, but BNL is definitely for
Yeah.
me. They've been one of my favorite groups for a very 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 long time.
Cool.
Yeah, well, that's what's up this week. How about you?
I have not had that exciting a week. Trying to think. I just got nothing.
It's Wednesday.
I it's yeah, it's Wednesday. I got nothing.
That's funny.
All right, so I guess jumping into things, a couple, well, I got one item of follow up, a couple items of follow up, I guess.
Yeah, I had one.
We talked about last week about GDPR and rules, who it applies to and who it doesn't apply to. And I think the implication or outright what was said last week was
Wrong.
I found a lookup. It says a data subject under GDPR is anyone within the borders of the EU at the time of processing of their personal data. However, they can also be anyone and anywhere in the context of an EU established data controllers and data processors. If the data subject moves out of the EU border and say becomes an expat or goes on holiday, then their personal data processed under these circumstances is not covered by GDPR, and they are no longer a data subject in the context of the GDPR unless their data is still processed by an organization established in the EU. So if a citizen from the EU goes on vacation to wherever that's not in the EU, that hotel they stay at is not beholden to GDPR regulations. I guess that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
but it still feels a little squishy, a little fuzzy.
Yeah, it's the established in the EU. That's probably the thing
Right.
because if it's a hotel chain and so anyway, we're
Yeah.
definitely not lawyers. This is why that there are pros that do this.
Right.
But okay, so that means some of our wild speculation from before is not valid.
Slightly off.
And so, yeah, my European friends come to the United States, and then we can find your location anywhere at any point, just like any other
That's right.
United States citizen. That's not unreasonable search, is it? Oh, sorry. That was my
Goodness.
sarcasm coming out. Okay, sorry.
Yes.
Okay,
There's
okay. So there we go.
only political jokes I can think of, and I'm trying not to trying to avoid
That's
politics
fine.
here.
Yes. One of the follow up pieces that I had was, we've speculated, or we've at least broached the topic a couple of times over the last few weeks about, the Echo devices and Wi-Fi hotspots, mesh networks converging, that kind of thing. And one of the announcements I saw on the Amazon blog was of a ODM solution, original device manufacturers, that can embed Alexa into things like laptops. And so
Right.
there's a whole program for doing that kind of thing. And they're actually they were announcing that there's the first few laptops that have Echo built in are being announced. So they've got a whole program, and Amazon's all about spread the hardware everywhere, and then use the same service on the back end.
I wonder if you get I have a couple of those Belkin Wemo switches for turning lights on and off, and they have works with Google Home, works with Amazon Alexa, works with HomeKit sticker. They got all three stickers pasted across, or devices can. I don't know if it works with HomeKit or not. I wonder if the independent router vendors now will you can go to right now I go to my Amazon hockey puck and I say, it's only Amazon, but
Right.
is there a market for a device
that can talk to
that will answer to all three?
Multilingual.
Yes.
And
depending on whether I say.
Did you see this Sonos announcement this week?
I didn't.
I don't have it in front of me because I wasn't in my plan to bring up, but we can find a link and have that be a part of follow up too. But Sonos announced a sound bar of some sort. I don't remember the product name, but it has
Beam. The Sonos Beam.
Oh, see, you with a quiet keyboard can type while I cannot without
That's
clicking.
Right.
Sonos Beam. So it has Siri and Echo built in, and will have Google Home support. So.
Oh.
Right.
So there you go. It'll answer to all three.
Yeah, you didn't know about that, I guess, but
no.
Coincidentally, that might have just been today too that I saw a link to that.
Well, all the articles are from like 9 hours ago, 12 hours ago. So,
Yeah. So yes, well, I think that we can have polyglot devices. Does that phrase make any sense when it comes to multilingual?
Well, I will tell you that I already do this at home. I'll say, Alexa, turn out the light, and it'll spin, or it'll say, I don't seem to see the light available right now, and then I'll turn right around and tell Google to do it, and ping, lights go out. So now it's just who's going to answer correctly. I got one device to talk to, and one of them will be able to answer. I frankly have no hope it will ever be Siri, but at least Amazon or Google will be able to answer that.
Yeah. Are we going to talk any of the
Siri would work?
Are we going to talk any of this Siri stuff later, or you're all on security?
I guess we. Well, yeah. I suppose we could if it pops up, but yeah, no. My topics. Should we jump into my topics?
No, not quite. We got to. I think that's the big one. We should talk the other big news of the week, which was, as we transition out of follow up. I think was there another piece of follow up?
No,
nope, that was all right. It. Let's transition out of follow up and into topics here. But so the big, and obviously the Apple's WWDC is happening this week. There's lots of stuff there. That'll actually be the second topic. But first day of WWDC, and Microsoft has a big announcement for us.
Didn't they have a big announcement last year, right, at WWDC? Or was it 2 years ago?
It was 2 years ago. They acquired something else.
LinkedIn.
Was it LinkedIn? That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Was that 2 years ago? Or was it just last year?
Why are you putting me on the spot like that?
I'm pretty sure that was it.
Time. I can't remember time. Like that? It was not long ago. I'll tell you that. Not long ago could have been 2 years ago or 4 years ago. But no, so they announced that they're buying GitHub, which was received with a binomial reception. People either seem to be like hair on fire, oh my god, I'm going to GitLab tomorrow, or oh, hey, that's pretty cool. So
yeah,
frankly, I'm on the hey, that's pretty cool side. And actually, it was kind of funny to see some of the posts from a couple of years ago come up. Like there was a thread on Hacker News There was another couple tweets I saw from like, wasn't it you shared one with me from Jason Fried from 37 Signals had said something about from 2015 or something like that. So I think that when you first texted me, you actually texted this to me on Sunday that, hey, there's a rumor. And I was like, man, Satya Nadella, you are a genius.
Yeah.
I think that this is a fantastic move. This is not, I'd say, your grandfather's Microsoft, but really it was just us, like post-college Microsoft.
Right.
This is not the Microsoft from 20 years ago. Microsoft is the most active contributor to GitHub. Oh, actually, that was one of the jokes, was that Microsoft looked at their GitHub bill and was like, oh, well, maybe we should just buy them.
Yeah.
And then, the other joke I saw was something like, there's a guy that moved from Microsoft to GitHub who's kind of, famous in a small pond here, Phil Hack. And he had said that he kind of offered some GitHub stickers to Scott Guthrie, Scott Goo of Microsoft fame, who evidently Scott was like, ooh, those are really cool. I'll just buy the company. Because now the GitHub will actually fold in underneath his wing of Microsoft. So anyway, I'm as I look around at other possible acquirers of GitHub, I can maybe think of one or two that might have been, interesting. But I can think of a whole lot that would have been way worse. So I don't know. I think it's, let's see what they do.
I think generally I'm on the side of, hey, this is probably a good thing, or I'm not hair on fire, screaming, running to GitLab or Bitbucket. I would be more curious about what this does for GitHub, because GitHub is also somewhat used as a web server for some causes, or posting stuff that is frowned upon in other countries. I stumbled across an article from Wired. I don't know if you've seen it, but it talked about there's a lot of stuff on GitHub that China would prefer not have available to its citizens, but so much of China's open source community is on GitHub, they would be hard pressed to block GitHub entirely. Now that Microsoft owns GitHub, would China have
a little more leverage?
Different kind of leverage, or different kind of levers. Anyways, after kind of initially thinking, well, this is kind of cool, this article by this article by Wired really made me stop and think maybe this wasn't that great an idea, because as kind of an independent company, GitHub was able to kind of tell China, no, I'm not going to remove whatever, they have some notes in here, objectionable content, because it's not like Facebook or Google or other things. It's source code. Mm-hmm. So I guess that it will be interesting to see how countries where Microsoft wants to do business then has to deal with probably some requests to have them censor or remove or whatever GitHub, and do those type of projects just migrate happily over to GitLab, and countries then just censor GitLab or Bitbucket, or I don't know. Like I said, I think in general I'm not necessarily offended or put off by the idea of Microsoft buying GitHub, but these type of questions didn't occur to me in the initial stuff. So I don't know. We'll see. Especially like with a lot of security stuff. I mean, to kind of pull it into the security circle, a lot of security tools get released on GitHub
They do.
and scanners and, a lot of those kind of things. The article also mentions some stuff where GitHub actually decided to delete some code that was posted by the shadow brokers from 2016, that whole stuff
Oh,
that they had found from the NSA. So the
Eternal
NSA is
Blue
essentially
stuff.
the NSA source code. Yeah, and GitHub removed that. So GitHub as a smaller standalone company, even though they were generally global, probably had an easier go at being able to thumb their nose at countries and things they agreed with. Like apparently GitHub has had run-ins with China and in India and I believe somewhere in Europe and Russia. And they generally could just say, nah, that's not what we do because we're not a social media. We're not a personal thing. It's just source code. But now that
Right.
there's the extra lever of Microsoft, I don't know.
Yeah. No, there's definitely, you've seen some of the things that Apple's done and, at China's behest over the course of the last couple of years, and especially with, access to iCloud and things like that. There's definitely leverage that, GitHub might have skated by on or without before. I think one of the other things I guess I'm interested in seeing how Microsoft handles it is what the go-to-market strategy, I guess, will be if it varies once the acquisition closes. So, for example,
Yeah.
I still have my MSDN subscription. Does that, give me a private GitHub account now? With
If I
certain,
pay for LinkedIn and I'm a developer, do I get a private GitHub account?
yeah.
Or if I pay for GitHub, do I get LinkedIn
Oh,
Premium?
there you go. Or
Because I pay for a GitHub. I have my own
I
private GitHub.
Yeah, I do too. Anyway, so yeah, they're going to keep it as a quote unquote separate entity at the moment. But I think you and I have been through a number of those things since we've both worked for acquisitive companies over the past few
Yeah.
years. That's certainly what you do at the beginning, and it makes sense. And then sort of depending on how
Yeah,
how it goes, it can.
it's yeah, it's a separate entity until it's no longer a separate entity,
Yeah.
and there is no time. That's not a sliding scale or a fixed quantity of time.
No.
It's an event,
Exactly.
and you never know when that event happens.
So, so
Yeah.
I'm net positive on that. I think that I'm happy for the people at Microsoft that have really been pushing open source, that have been pushing kind of for a different tenor, and that have man, the last 10 years really. There's been a lot of good stuff that's come out of Microsoft. And after Satya Nadella took over, his, I don't know, I kind of hate the word pivot, but his, let's say, maniacal focus on services, Azure. I mean, obviously he
Mm-hmm.
came from the Azure group, and, just building software that makes your customers' lives easier is fantastic. And I mean, heck, just look at Visual Studio Code.
I love it. It has become my editor for the because I'm a Mac guy generally.
You got to use it to write JavaScript. All right, my friend. You ready to switch?
Sure. So maybe it's a little premature, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about WWDC next week again. The two that I wanted to talk about from WWDC were this concept of notarized apps. Right now, when you as a developer want to deliver a Mac app, you can either submit it through the Mac App Store, and Apple manages it, makes sure that it's a sandbox, does all the security for you, or you can sign it with a certificate.
Your own developer certificate.
Right, your developer ID, which Apple issues you. So Apple can still revoke your developer ID if your apps go rogue. And then Apple's gatekeeper will block that from functioning. Or what will be new in macOS Mojave, which is what the new version is. We're going away from mountains now, and we're going to the deserts. Is this concept of notarized apps. And a notarized app, basically what happens is you run it through your development process, you sign it, you send it to Apple. Apple runs a security check on it. They do some scanning on your app on Apple's side, and they said initially they're trying to get this time down, but when you submit it to Apple, it'll take at least an hour, roughly an hour, to run all the scans and then return you a ticket, I guess they call it. I think they call it a ticket. They return a ticket, and then you use the development tools to staple this ticket to your binary. And now when someone... I know. When you launch the app, so you launch the app or you install the app or whatever you're doing, the experience from the consumer side now is what it used to say was, you downloaded this from the internet, are you sure you want to run it? And it was kind of this generic logo with a little yellow warning label saying, hey, you didn't get this from the App Store, are you sure you want to use it? And Gatekeeper's happy because it was signed with a certificate Apple is happy with. But now with this notarized apps, it will show your app icon and say, hey, you downloaded this from the internet. Do you want to run it now? Mm-hmm. Instead of, and it's much friendlier dialogue. I mean, it still prompts you, but now it's got your app logo and it's a more friendly dialogue. And
they haven't added another level to Gatekeeper where you can run notarized apps without warning, though.
No. What Apple has done, which is kind of a little bit separate topic, is they've added a lot more restriction and user interaction requirement to other parts of things you might want to do with an app. If you wanted to use the camera or the microphone on a Mac before, you could just use them. But now you have to. I don't have my notes on that. That was a whole list which I wasn't ready to talk about. But that you can no longer access message history, call history, cookies. You can no longer access browser history, mail database. They've locked down a whole bunch of other parts of just the Mac OS that has PII in it. So think of all the things on your Mac that would have personally identifiable information. Those are things now that will cause a user prompt to come up, and the user will have to say, yes, I want to allow this app to do whatever, access my mail or all through API. So they're really, really tightening down what apps can do and making it more difficult for malicious software to do something. So before, one of the things that happened, I guess, why this notarized app is interesting, or is I think maybe a little more useful, is if a developer got a hold of a developer ID certificate that signed the binary, and you ran that binary, and you could tell that it was not. That's the other thing is the notarized app in that whole certificate process verifies that it hasn't been tampered with. But this means Apple has scanned it before. I could release malicious software with either stolen, or if I signed up for a developer ID and got through the process, and it would be available for some period of time before Apple was able to, revoke the certificate for that app to run or Gatekeeper to run. With the notarized app, what happens now is when you try to run that app, it checks that notary.
Well, so in that case, you would have to steal not only the...
I think the key point there is the difference is that you've actually submitted that app, and Apple has had a chance to sign it, look at it, or scan it, look at it, and verify it, where before the developer ID, Apple never saw it. Now Apple has seen it, and Apple has given you the heads up that, yes, this app is okay.
Right.
So it's a little bit more secure in that aspect. Is you're not going to submit malware to Apple and have them give you that notarized app.
I wonder two things. I mean, the first, which I guess the meta point there is that if somebody were to steal a certificate, they would then also have to steal credentials for that Apple developer account, because they'd have to be able to submit that app for signing to get it notarized. So, there's essentially kind of the equivalent of a second factor there. But I wonder, have you read anything about rate limiting for that submission? I mean, if it's entirely automated, I wonder how many automated build pipelines would include that as a step, or should include that as a step. There's lots of software that has, that gets released daily.
Yeah. So right now they said it takes about an hour from submission to when they approve it, because they're doing scanning on their side. So to your first example, if you were malicious, stole something, and wanted to submit something and get something out there, ransomware or something, you would have to also trick Apple's scanners into believing that your stuff was not malicious to get that ticket.
Right.
It's going to be hard to say that ticket to notarize your app and then distribute it, as opposed to just being able to sign it with a developer ID. And now it could get past gatekeeper if you could just trick someone into saying, yeah, okay, run this. I'm happy with this. But anyways, so that was an interesting thing. I need to dig into more about what that actually means, and maybe run a few apps through, some dummy apps through, and see what the behavior is and play around with it. But it's an interesting idea, and I would expect our friends in Redmond, who we just talked about how much we love them, to do something similar, to follow suit.
Yeah.
As they have with Windows 10s. And
so I guess
like
a question for you, which if you don't know the answer now, maybe you can, just keep your ear to the ground as you're researching some of this stuff. But so with the additional, I guess not restrictions, but the additional user prompting for getting access to other areas of the file system, having apps that can traverse the file system, are apps that honor the new APIs available to be put into the App Store where they weren't before because of the gatekeeper restrictions? Is I guess the question. So can I get an app in the App Store that
maybe I couldn't before
because of the gatekeeper restrictions?
I don't know.
I'll be curious about that.
I'm sure there were something. For example, I would love to see. One of the things they announced, it was in their, it was in the keynote. They announced that Panic and Transmit was coming back to the App Store, and so famously is not the right adverb there, but they pulled their stuff from the Mac App Store because it wasn't financially viable for them. So I think I did read that they put one in the App Store, but it's going to be subscription based only. But I don't know if that also included some, as you were asking, additional APIs that made it better. Because definitely as an FTP client, or as a file transfer client, you're probably not playing in just your own sandbox.
Yeah.
So
if Panic has posted a full description, I haven't seen it yet. But I did see a side comment, I thought from Cable, but maybe it was somebody else, that the first thing was that they were able to have the same code run both in the App Store and not. And that the second gate was that they had a monetization strategy they were willing to try. And so the second thing is obviously the fact that it's subscription only in the App Store, which, obviously will help fund future development. That's the whole point. And, since the App Store doesn't support upgrade pricing, and it's kind of buy once and then own forever, that is a good way to not incent developers to continue writing software for an app that, presumably if you bought it and you use it, you would like it to improve over time. But anyway, back to the first thing. The first thing that I thought I remembered reading was that they thought they could have the same app in both. Because that's one of the other things is as an indie developer, especially, having to maintain 2 different builds with 2 different feature sets and then support 2 different feature sets and, talk to a customer and say, oh, but you bought yours in the App Store, so that means that, it's crippled in these ways, or, that's just all kinds of bad.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, anyway, I'll be curious to see what the fallout is from that. I'm a fan of buying things in the App Store. If I can buy it in the App Store, I totally will, just because it's so nice to be able to go to a new Mac or log in with my Apple ID.
I don't lose the DVD or the CD or the license key. I don't have to worry about all that stuff anymore.
I don't miss DVDs in the least. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. What's your second big topic from WWDC?
So I guess the second one, and before we run too long here, is they announced something that is actually somewhat near and dear to my heart, being a parent of children and now teenagers. They announced some parental control pieces for app usage. So they talked about, I think we talked about a couple weeks ago with Google and Android Popsicle, whatever they're going to call it. Had a lot of stuff about, hey, how to get you off your device, show you, hey, you're spending way too much time on your device, trying to give you that kind of info. Apple didn't couch it in those terms necessarily, but they are doing something similar. And in addition to it, they're giving you the ability to, if you're part of a family, if you're on their Apple family plan, you can see remotely, lock your kids or give your kids, an hour of Instagram or an hour of Snapchat a day and things like that, which
limits.
When my daughter finds out, she's going to not upgrade. I'll have to sneak it from her and make her upgrade. But and so I think that's great. There are a whole bunch of small companies trying to do this for Apple already,
right?
And do this. And after I saw that announcement, the first thing in my head said, "Well, they just killed off a whole segment of the market." And now that I think about it, maybe not as much as I had initially thought.
But aren't most of those companies using the MDM APIs like Jamf or what is it? Disney Circle?
OurPact, Custodio. They're pretty much any security vendor has a parental control product, and it's for the most part it's VPNs and MDMs. And using the MDM for a consumer space, that's the only way to do it, number one. So, of course, that's the way they're going to do it. But kind of creeped me out because the MDM stuff was built for the enterprise. And the majority of the features in the MDM side are from the view or lens of an enterprise and not necessarily those of, what a family would want. And so these things they would do weird things like disabling apps and turning apps on and off. And my concern here about these companies that do this had always been, if you are building a consumer product with APIs that are built for an enterprise, don't freak out when the APIs that are consumerish, like blocking explicit music, in the music app, goes away, because an enterprise really is not going to feel a need to not let you listen to the kind of music you want, right. But a parent does. Or an enterprise is not going to want to block the YouTube app on your BYOD device, but a parent might. There's a lot of kludgy ways that these companies have kind of done this, and I think Apple, for the most part, has satisfied, at least for me, the things I cared about time, being able to limit usage of certain apps and the phone overall. And I've already got all the location stuff with Find My Friends, and I think it's going to be the market for these parental control products continues to shrink. And it's going to be a tough go for 'em.
Conversely, the total available features to everybody grows dramatically as the things like this are integrated into the core OS. I guess my main comment on this is I'm very intrigued about this because I'm I actually run my son's phone through Apple Configurator, so it's not like I don't run an MDM, but I plugged it into my Mac and put down a really restrictive policy on it that he can't change. And
Yep.
I'll be very interested in being able to do more of this stuff, kind of quote unquote remotely from the parental device. But my main caveat for this is, let's see what happens when we actually get to play with it, because Apple is notorious for putting out a quote unquote MVP, and it is minimum. And so, it's often the second or third year that is where things become, actually usable.
Valid point. Yeah. But just from the keynote, if it just does those 2 or 3 things I saw there, I think that will satisfy my parental requirements or requests, I guess I should say.
Yeah. Well, I'll be curious. I'll definitely play around with it once. I don't have any device that I'm willing to put beta software on these days. I guess I got a lot of devices in my top desk drawer.
That was one impressive thing is Apple is supporting in iOS 12 the same devices it supported in iOS 11.
I was very impressed by the focus on performance. Again, I haven't seen it. The lip service paid to it though is very good, and so money where your mouth is. They didn't drop any phones from iOS 11, which is great. And they presented lots of numbers about apps launching X% faster, and I think it was more like 30-40% kind of thing. Good for them. Maybe one of the next CPUs in the next phone, it won't be a huge momentous leap, but will be massively lower powered, and the batteries will last longer. I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll see. And they've been on a very steep ramp of the processor curve for the last 5 years. So it's yet to be seen how fast that will start tapering off.
There's tons of more stuff at WWDC, but we're going long. So
all right, we better wrap. Let's get something fun. What's your something fun tonight?
So mine is another video.
Oh, you child of YouTube. Awesome. You're too cool for school.
This one was actually on Mashable, and it hit a number of totally cool bits for me. So there's a guy, a US-based contractor, who developed a 3D printer that works with concrete. He's actually building printing houses, full-size houses.
I watched that video when you linked it. That is so cool. And I could see, yes, that hits a lot of Eric buttons. Mr. 3D printer. But amazingly cool. Maybe they had it somewhere else. I didn't see a picture of the whole machine though.
No, I didn't either. So to be honest, I didn't follow it other than just watch the teaser video on the tweet from Mashable. Okay. But I probably should follow it. So I generally love architecture anyways, and the first thing that kind of popped in my head was if Gaudí had this in Spain in the 1800s when he started the Sagrada Familia, they'd have been done by now. Because I don't know if you're aware, the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, Spain, is a church that's going to take, I think it finishes in 2028, 2025, something like that. And they've started construction and architecture in the 1800s, the late 1800s. And they've been building and building and building for 100+ years. Because it has all these just fascinating. We should include a link to just what it looks like for people who don't know.
I don't know.
Just odd shapes and changes. And when you look at the Sagrada Familia, if you Google it and you look at the Sagrada Familia, you'll go, I see why a 3D printer might make that easier. So that's what I thought. I before I decided to get into computers, I thought I might want to be an architect someday. So architecture and things around that fascinate me still.
Okay.
Anyways,
okay.
that's my something fun.
That is cool. The video was awesome. I got to see this church. That's fantastic. That's something that's cooler than mine. You're always making me feel bad, Eric. You're always making me feel bad. I'm bringing down the average here. All right. Well, my something fun was I was watching some WWDC stuff. I guess I didn't get to see either the keynote or the State of the Union in full, but I watched chunks of them. And it always makes me go, I should write more software for the Mac. I swear most stuff I do these days is either JavaScript or Python. But there was a GitHub link that had essentially a registry of tons of open source Mac software. So written in all sorts of languages and all sorts of products. And I mean, I'm going to guess a couple hundred, actually, since it's still there, of links to open source Mac software written in script or Objective-C or JavaScript or Python or, let's see if there's anything else. There's actually a little code that says, with little icons next to it. So, C or C++ or JavaScript or Objective-C, Swift, CoffeeScript, TypeScript, Python, CSS, Ruby, Rust, Lua, Haskell. All right, who's doing Haskell? For real. And even C#. So I guess if you're a Mono fan, maybe.
Yeah.
But anyway, this was my something cool. This made me go, I want to spend a couple hours on this. And to be honest, I've poked in and looked at a couple, but I haven't actually tried to build anything here. But this was the thing that kind of made me most go, oh, that's cool this week. And so if you ever want to, you're looking for needing to do something in a Mac app, and you're like, oh, hey, what did somebody else do? A, maybe there's something here that's already interesting because there's, a couple dozen different categories, and then B, in that category, maybe there's something, if you want to do something that's, manipulating audio, there's, 20 different.
It's always fun to learn how to code with something that you're interested in and that's kind of already done. Monkey see, monkey do.
Right. Yeah. Just look at what other people are doing.
That's cool.
So
this is a huge list. I'm flipping through it.
Isn't it crazy?
Wow. Yeah.
You could spend weeks just like browsing source. And I love browsing source. I just, I don't know.
Yeah.
Something cool. And I gotta say, I don't know Swift. Like, I followed a Stanford course a couple years ago, and wrote a calculator. I think it was. But but I've never done it for production at all, and it's something that is, I guess on the last few episodes of ATP, Casey and Marco have been talking about Marco writing Swift, and I was like, oh, That's a language that I would like to know. I feel like I would like to know, but anyway, there's not enough time in the world.
Cool.
This was my something cool. Call it a wrap.
Yep. Call it good.
All right.
We'll see you
All right.
tomorrow.
Good night, Eric.
Bye.